But you can't say for sure it's a Sasquatch until you have that body, until you have that type of specimen to match the DNA up with.
I was gonna say, what kind of DNA is needed to do like cloning, like to clone something? Like, do they need like blood? Do they need like fucking like embryonic tissue? Like, how does that work? Because my question is, if I'm not a fucking scientist, you know, and I wonder, just like my conspiracy brain just goes to is like, if the government has a way to clone stuff, you know, and if what they need is a DNA sample to do it, what kind of DNA sample is enough? Is a hair sample enough? And if someone had something that they're like, this is a Bigfoot, would the government just take it, go underground? Like they have underground cities. Like we know about this. This is like verified. You know, do you know about Raven Rock?
Nope.
Raven Rock is in the mountains in Pennsylvania. It's a real place. There's entire documentaries about it, right? It was built during the Cold War and it's still used. We have an entire auxiliary government that exists in this mountain, right? And it's an underground city. And it's for like, if we get nuclear attacked, we have every single member of our government, like every member of Congress, every member of the Senate, everybody in the cabinet and like the presidential cabinet, like the whole government.
They can go there.
Not even. We have someone who like assumes their role.
So not them exactly, but someone that can replace them.
Yeah, we have like basically an avatar for them in this mountain. That's just like underground, shadow government that definitely briefs the government.
But those ones aren't elected, right?
No.
Right.
Yeah, and this is the thing, it's like Raven Rock, like at the highest level of shit, like government decisions, they take orders from Raven Rock. And there's a president in there, there's a vice president in there, there's a whole government in there. And so like if we got nuclear war, like yeah, they'd try to get our government into the bunkers and stuff, but they don't really care if they do. Because they already have all of those people accounted for living inside of Raven Rock. Like they're always there. That's their job. And my point is, we know about that level of shit. Like we're aware of that. Like that's a thing that's like, yeah, that's America's contingency plan, you know? If somebody actually found a fucking Bigfoot, like a possibly breedable with human genome, right? Would the government want that for like making super soldiers? Or like doing studies of making super soldiers in the future? Like even just to like put the DNA on dry ice just for like when they're finally ready with like what they're doing with CRISPR and all of this shit. Like, this is ours, you can't have that, classified shit, doesn't exist, so that they have that genetic piece to like make like supercharged humans. Like, I genuinely wonder this. Like, I know that's like fantastical conspiracy bullshit, but like, I kind of feel like knowing they have underground cities, they've got to have underground cloning programs. You know, and if they've got underground cloning programs, if you had a human like viable genetic that could be mixed with human, that could make people 8 feet tall and strong as shit, and possibly even more intelligent, with like heightened senses and stuff, to me that's like an ultimate super soldier weapon. You know, like even if they haven't the ability to currently do anything with it, they'd want it for their personal use, you know, for the government's use. I wonder that. But yeah, that's just my conspiracy rant.
Yeah, I think that genetic material will be very valuable. And I do think that, you know, if they're discovered, we might take a few babies, juveniles, might try to raise them up with people. And yeah, I think if that's possible, that'd be definitely valuable, making people like that.
Do you think they have language? If they exist?
There might be some form of proto-language, but I don't really think so. I just think it's, you know, most primates communicate vocally too, but it's not like this specific sound means this thing always. Yeah, I think they're pretty isolated from each other. Like ones in Florida are gonna be able to communicate with ones way up there. There's this misconception that it's one individual Bigfoot and he goes around all the states and is responsible for all the science. And That's pretty stupid.
Yeah, I've heard like the interdimensional theories on Bigfoot.
There's the paranormal side of it, and there's the biological camp, like the woo camp, and like the biological. This is a primate. This is a real animal. Everything can be explained for by evolution, biology, and there's other sides, spiritual being.
Yeah, the thing that whatever it was that we heard in Michigan, it didn't sound like it had language. It sounded like it just made sound to let you know, like, fuck you, get out of my territory.
Yeah.
Yup.
Yeah.
Fucking, I wanted to ask you about the anthropologist at MSU who donated a lot of the prints and stuff.
Yeah.
Who is that?
So that anthropologist that donated the prints to this university, he gave it, so Dr. Grover Krantz, there's sort of the four horsemen in Bigfoot: Dr. Grover Krantz, Peter Byrne, Renee DeHinden, and yeah. So Dr. Grover Krantz is the initial academic that had all the footprints in his lab at Washington State University, sort of what Dr. Jeff Meldrum is now. But Dr. Grover Krantz was initially interested in the subject in the 1960s. Anyway, he was friends with Tom Roll, who's a department here at MSU, and gave 2 casts to him and brought here. Tom Roll long is gone. He doesn't work here anymore. He's an assistant living now. But Dr. Grover Krantz made a copy of an Ivan Marks hand cast and a footprint cast made by Roger Patterson in the Bluff Creek area in 1963, 4 years before the footage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So with the footage, we have Roger Patterson just after the film took his best example of the left, best example of the right footprint that he could find. Bob Titmus came back, casted 10 consecutive footprints in a row, but there were, and that's of a female film subject, but there are other individuals in the area, and we can see that because once you get enough casts from multiple decades, enough casts of different individuals in one particular area, you can start to point out the same repeat individual appearances. And in the 1950s, the name Bigfoot came from the Jerry Crew construction site where Bob Hieronymus, a hoaxer, took carved wooden foots that he made and he leased out a construction site to Jerry Crew, but he went to that construction site that he leased out and faked footprints there. And then those footprints were ended up in the newspaper, and it was Bigfoot was the name on the newspaper. But over the years of that construction site, there were fake footprints in there, but there were also real footprints of real Sasquatches going through the construction site. Because construction sites are pure topsoil, they're just soil most of the time. So it's perfect to preserve footprints. But in 1958, there was a cast of this particular individual that's authentic, a real Sasquatch. That individual is most likely the same individual that left a track in the Bluff Creek area in 1963, about 5 years later. And then a few more repeat appearances of that same male individual, most likely.
And the prints match. That's how they know it's the same one.
Right. But the prints never look the same because the substrate's different. The context at what the print was made is different, whether it's running, walking, where it is, what it is doing, and what the moisture content of the soil is. And then you can pretty much see the same individuals and then differentiate. Like, if all the footprints look the exact same, then it would be a hoax because they'd just be artificial prosthetics that people are going around stamping in soils. But they're not. They're all individualized, but with the same features, with the same anatomy that's pretty consistent across all of them. And what is that anatomy? Well, the most convincing anatomy is the mid-tarsal break and the skin ridge detail. And the skin ridge detail is known as dramatic lithics or dermal ridges. Those are the lines on our hands. They're also on our feet, only in primate species. And so from those different patterns, you can differentiate species and then individuals within that species. And then we have a data set of 300 to 400 casts. And within that data set, we have 1 to 2 dozen casts with dermals on them, dramatic lithics. And those are really convincing. You just cannot hoax those. And then the most convincing things when it comes to the footprints it's not individual footprints. It's also, more convincingly, entire trackways and the dynamics of the trackways that show the true hallmarks of what an authentic trackway is. And those hallmarks are the imperfections. The imperfections show you that they're authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Half tracks, which is just the forefoot and the toes without the heel, those are half tracks, mixed in with a trackway of regular tracks. Those half tracks are an indicator of flexibility, retained flexibility in the middle part of their foot. So that mid-tarsal break we see all the time is when that foot hits the ground, it bends in the middle of their foot and the forefoot pushes back a line of substrate to the midfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a mid-tarsal break. Now, sometimes it's so extreme to where you only see that forefoot on the ground. But for example, the 5 points trackway that Dr. Jeff Meldrum looked at, which was the initial trackway that Paul Freeman found one morning, and then Dr. Jeff Meldrum and I think his brother paid an unexpected visit to Paul Freeman in Walla Walla, coming back, I think, from Dr. Grover Krantz's lab, looking at some footprints in there, and then Paul Freeman said, "Hey, do you want to look at some actual tracks that I just found this morning?" So they went down and to I don't remember the road, but it was right next to the Mill Creek watershed in the Blue Mountains of Washington, and the tracks had dramatic lithics on them, dermal ridges, and those super fine details only last for a very specific amount of time. That's an indicator of how fresh that track is that skin is still present. And so it was, but they came back with casting material, and the dramatic lithics had gone away after a few hours. After that whole day.
And that's like the creases and stuff.
It's not necessarily creases, it's the actual skin lines on our hands, like criminology and stuff. But skin creases would be like wrinkles and stuff.
Yeah.
And we have 4 to 5 casts of a particular individual named Wrinkled Foot, I believe for that same reason. I have one of those casts with me here today. I don't see any wrinkles on it, but and with the 5 points trackway, there were dragons of the toes, slips and slides, and most of the time, every second to right footprint was angled out 45 degrees. And then, as Dr. Jeff Meldrum was analyzing this track, he'd look back to see how the track progressed. And every time he looked back, his foot turned out 45 degrees. So this thing was going back to the only cover in the area, back into the Mill Creek watershed, that early morning, and it was looking back over its shoulder. Maybe there was cars or trucks down there or people or something that was checking. But yeah, all the imperfections, the little details are hallmarks of a true trackway that a hoaxer just wouldn't think to hoax. Yeah. And especially in mud and a lot of different substrates, the toe position changes track to track to track, which means they're not fixed feet. The actual biological feet where the toes are moving, and they're in different positions in each track.
Yup. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. So I have a few more. So this is a knuckle print. A knuckle print. So we have hand prints, we got knuckle prints, we got foot prints.
Bro!
I know, that's huge.
It's so big.
Yeah. This one's from 1982 in Elk Wallow in the Blue Mountains. Paul Freeman.
What are the Blue Mountains? That's Oregon, isn't it?
Yep. So most of Oregon, like on the eastern side of Oregon, and it goes up like a tenth of it is up in Washington, a little bit near Walla Walla. This one was in a line of footprints. So there were 2 other footprints to go along with this track. And those footprints, the trackway itself is called the dermals. One of the best examples of dramatic lithics and one of the most early examples of dermal ridges in footprints. And this was in that trackway too. This was from 1980. Paul Freeman, he had an amazing career studying these animals. He casted, I think a data said 58 casts almost over the course of 10, 20, 30 years. And he worked with Dart Addington and Wes Summerlin and those guys up in there. And they did a lot of work, and we can thank them because we have footprints, we got handprints, we got knuckle prints, all from the same area. So you you have a data set to where you can see repeat appearances of individuals.
And do they think that all of these prints came from the same individual?
Absolutely not. No.
Man, dude, that hand, the knuckle print, that shit looks real as fuck, man.
Yeah, man. Sasquatches, their thumbs aren't as opposable as ours. I think there's only one primate that has a non-opposable thumb. Only one. Other primates have different degrees of opposability. They all have opposable thumbs, but to different degrees.
Mm.
So I think there's a misconception out there that a lot of people say that Sasquatches have non-divergent thumbs. Non-opposable thumbs.
They have less divergent.
Yeah, I think they're less divergent. And this is actually Dr. Grover Krantz, who made those two casts in the Bone Lab here at Wilson Hall at Montana State University, also did an extensive write-up on this cast in his book. Right there, Bigfoot Sasquatch Evidence, the Anthropologist Speaks Out by Dr. Grover Krantz. And when anybody's getting into the subject and they're reading literature, that's the first book everybody should read. And then you should go and read Dr. Jeff Meldrum's books, Dr. John Bitternagel's books, and I have a few more. So this one is not that big. It's average. Who knows? This one was casted in 1994. By Dar Addington. This is the left example. There's also a right one. But this was Biscuit Ridge, also in the Blue Mountains, I believe. So if you want to show that, I believe that's a stick there or something.
It's so fucking insane, dude. Like, that is huge, and this is not even a big one.
No, so. Usually when casts get, 20 inches, once they become 20 inches and above, most of those are fakes. There are a lot of hoaxes out there. There's a lot of fake ones out there. When they get 20 inches and bigger than that, they're pretty much hoax. This one's like 14 inches, maybe. I'm not too sure. Don't remember. Now we're getting into the good stuff. So the second best piece of footage ever of a Sasquatch was at Duck Springs, filmed by Paul Freeman. Yeah, so this is from Duck Springs. This is 1992, the Paul Freeman footage site. So this was cast the same day, just after he filmed the Freeman footage, and the Freeman footage is the second best footage we got, and it's freaking huge. And there were multiple Sasquatches in the area that day, and Paul Freeman around that time had a pretty good schedule down to where he'd show up to Duck Springs at certain days at certain times, because that was the only water source in that area, the only prominent water source where things could drink from. But one day his daughter, her car broke down, and he had to help her fix it and resolve that issue. And then he drove out to the mountains way late, way later than expected, and he caught these things off guard. They were down there drinking when he pulled up, and they walked back in to the forest, and he comes upon these tracks, and you can see in the footage the tracks in the dirt, and then he hears brush popping and stuff, and it goes right across, right to left, and there it goes, and then it looks up. It's a pretty good piece of footage, but this is from there.
Bro, look at how big it is. It's fucking crazy. I can't believe you have these.
Yeah.
Are these yours?
Yep.
These your copies?
Yeah. I've turned my college dorm into a footprint lab.
That is so
I got them
cool.
on my drawer. You pull up the drawers, I got all these casts in there.
That is so fucking cool.
And then this particular cast is one of an individual that we have multiple casts of. We have 4, maybe even 5 casts of this same individual, and her
with the toes in different positions.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. And at different times, across a decade or so in the same area. And this individual's name is Wrinkled Foot. This one is from 1984 at Table Springs. This was also cast by Paul Freeman, and I got this from his son Michael Freeman, who lives in Spokane with his family, and he put together this incredible book Freeman Bigfoot Files, and that's a crazy post. So that's Bob Titmus on the right, and that's Michael Freeman, and they got all them tracks laid out there. And so actually, Paul Freeman always wanted to write a book, but he passed away in the early 2000s, so he never got a chance to. But his son finally put together all of his data, all of his voice recordings, which are in here as QR codes. And he's not the only one that wrote chapters in this book. The first chapter is actually written by Dr. Jeff Meldrum at Idaho State University. He has a PhD in physical anthropology, and he teaches human anatomy. And he has the largest collection of cast footprints in his lab at Idaho State University. He also put together and founded the Relic Hominoid Inquiry, which is the name of a scholarly journal hosted by Idaho State University, peer-reviewed by plenty of PhDs, and it's about literature of relic hominoids all over the world. And so there's all sorts of pictures of all these different casts. It's basically a book on Paul Freeman's life. Cliff Barrickman wrote a paragraph in here, or not a
Freeman
chapter.
is the one who made this cast?
Yeah, he found it and he casted it. But his son made a latex mold of the original cast, made a copy of it, and then I got that from him. So 3 of my casts here come from him, and then I also get a bunch more from the North American Bigfoot Center in Boring, Oregon, which is where I got this hat from right here. Gone Squatching. That's Bobo's favorite hat. He made that.
You said the most convincing footage outside of the Patterson footage was his footage,
Yes,
correct?
yes. And his other son, Dwayne, actually got still pictures from 3 different instances, out elk hunting, and got a bunch of pictures of a Sasquatch there.
What I was gonna ask is, do you know of him having seen the Sasquatch before getting the pictures?
Yes.
So
So he's had multiple sightings over the years.
Mm-hmm.
His first sighting was, I believe, on a road. He was an avid elk hunter, and he'd take his sons out elk hunting too. And I don't remember all the little details, but I think he's seen a Sasquatch at least twice, if not more than that, on a few different occasions. But yeah, the first time I think it was pretty big. It was up on a hill or something. I don't really remember, but yeah. There's audio recordings in this book. About a third of all audio recordings that he made, because he wanted to make a book. There's like QR codes in here you can scan and basically listen to him talk. But this is a book on his life. So yeah, this is Wrinkled Foot.
Doesn't even want to fit on the screen. Like, this is holding it like the same spot where I was holding
The toes look insane on that.
Dude,
I love the toes on that.
that is so fucking crazy. I want to show him like the.
Yeah, you can show him the back of it too.
Yeah. Dude, that is fucking crazy that you have these.
Yeah.
Man, when you're like a big dick swinging scientist someday, you have to have these like mounted all over your house, bro.
Yeah.
It's so
I'll have a shack
cool.
behind my house. Now I'll turn it into a lab.
That's so cool, man.
And so I got another one here. This is from 2004. A Canadian couple was hiking through Oregon and Washington. We don't know what state this was casted in, but it says a PNW cast for that reason. It was originally found on eBay, and it was being sold somewhere on eBay, and that's how the North American Bigfoot Center and Cliff got it. And he's done some analyses on it, and it's pretty convincing when you compare it to other casts. And it's got a really, really good example of the mid-tarsal break right here, where it dips down right here. And this looks like a left footprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it's the opposite.
Because it's a mirror image.
Right, it's a mirror image. In the ground, it would look like this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is a right footprint, and our toes on our feet go pretty much drop off diagonally, but theirs mostly stay pretty much across. And the toes aren't this short, right? They attach way down here. You're just getting the tip of it right here.
Mm-hmm. So it's got like an arch to it.
Sometimes there's this, like the short-toed Sasquatch and the long-toed Sasquatch, depending on the context of how the foot interacted with the soil. We're not casting the feet here. We're casting the damage done to the ground by the foot. There's a very big difference there. And Sasquatch's feet are flat-footed. We are not flat-footed. They are. But they are extremely flexible and malleable, and they can have that retained flexibility in the mid part of their foot. And then we don't have we have a longitudinal arch. They don't. So that sort of arch along our foot, that's like a curve. They don't got that either. But there's that. And I really like the three-dimensional view of that forefoot, like the pad right here,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that looks.
That's so fucking crazy.
I got one more here. This one, going out with a bang with this one.
Oh fuck yeah.
This one's the big finale.
Oh wow.
This is freaking huge.
This is the long toe.
Yeah, the entire length of the foot is 19 inches long. The biggest of the biggest right here. Obviously an adult male Sasquatch, no question. The toes are just completely splaying right here. And the original cast, I believe, was broke and put back together in the center here. But it does show that mid-tarsal break right here. 19 inches long. This one is from British Columbia, Canada. We don't know where in British Columbia. We don't know who casted it in British Columbia. And we don't know when it was casted. But the original was donated to the North American Bigfoot Center in Barron, Oregon, with basically no context as to where it came from other than it's from British Columbia.
And you're able to tell that it's real by like all of the hallmarks of a Sasquatch print.
Not only that, but the congruency of the toe configuration with other tracks of the same size. Listen, this is not a human feet cannot look like this at all. Even if you have a human foot the same length to the same size, the anatomy is still going to be very different because we're a different species. You get Shaq's foot and you compare it up to the same length maybe, right? Let's say it's same length. It looks like a banana compared to this thing. They're much broader as well.
Holy fuck. It's so big. Like, this is at the same distance as the first one. That's crazy. Bro.
Yeah, that's my all-time favorite.
That's so crazy.
But there's around 300 to 400 casts. Lots of them from Washington, Oregon, California, and Kentucky. A lot of them are from Kentucky, from Tom Shea. He has one of the largest collections in the world that he's casted by himself, like that are attributed to him, that like he's responsible for casting and finding. Tom Shea, a lot of handprints. He's very similar to Paul Freeman in that way. He does a lot of field journaling and observations out in the field.
Is
In
there
northern Kentucky.
has there ever been prints found from like a family of them
There has, yeah.
with like children?
Yup. So you can compare that to, in anthropology, we got a lot of trackways of where volcanic ash hardened over time, and we have thousands, maybe even a few million-year-old trackways that we found. And the main one is the Leotoli tracks, I believe, and that's where a female human, Homo sapien, was walking and pretty fast, and you could see a child being set down on the ground, and then little tiny footprints, and then picked back up and carried, and then picked back up and carried. But similarly with Sasquatches, there are a few trackways where there's two different sets of tracks. Like I believe the 3 mile trackway, the 7 mile trackway, and a few other trackways where there's a larger set of tracks, a smaller set of tracks. That smaller set of tracks, sometimes there's some really, really small footprints in there too, and then like almost a mother carrying a baby, setting it down, picking it up, things like that. Really rare, really, really rare to find footprints in general, because the nature of this species, no true biologist will ever ask the question, where are the predator bones? Especially one with the nature of the species of the Sasquatch, because they're long living, slow reproducing, no natural predators,
You
right?
think they bury their dead?
Right, and so a very large range